The desert stretched endlessly under the bruised sky of early evening, a vast ocean of sand and scrub brush painted in shades of copper and shadow. This was New Mexico, land of long horizons and longer silences, where the air tasted of dust and sage, and the wind carried secrets across miles of emptiness. It was a place where a man could disappear, and for Navy SEAL Marcus Hale, that was exactly the point. His truck rumbled down the gravel road, kicking up plumes of ochre dust that hung in the still air like ghosts. The engine's rhythmic growl was the only sound for miles, a mechanical heartbeat in the wilderness. Marcus drove with one hand on the wheel, his other arm resting on the open window, fingers tapping an unconscious rhythm against the hot metal. His face was a study in controlled exhaustion, sharp jawline shadowed by 3 days of stubble, deep-set hazel eyes that held the kind of stillness that comes not from peace, but from having seen too much. At 34, Marcus carried himself with the coiled efficiency of a weapon at rest. His body was lean and hard, built by years of brutal training and harder missions. Even in civilian clothes, a faded gray t-shirt and worn jeans, he moved with an economy of motion that spoke of discipline so deeply ingrained it had become instinct. He had left Virginia 3 weeks ago, driving west with no destination in mind, just the need to put distance between himself and the life he'd left behind. Beside him, in the passenger seat, pressed against the door with his massive head resting on the window frame, was Kaiser. The German shepherd was a magnificent specimen, 95 pounds of muscle, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. His coat was the classic black and tan, sleek and well-maintained despite the dust of the road. His ears stood alert even in rest, constantly tracking sounds Marcus's human ears would never catch. Kaiser's dark eyes, when they opened, held a depth of understanding that was almost unsettling, as if the dog could see straight through to the jagged pieces of Marcus's soul. They had been partners for 6 years, through 3 deployments and more firefights than Marcus cared to count. Kaiser had been trained for explosive detection and patrol work, but he was more than a military working dog. He was Marcus's anchor, the one constant in a life defined by chaos and loss. When everything else had fallen apart, when the mission in Kandahar went sideways, when his team leader took the bullet meant for him, when the nightmares made sleep impossible, Kaiser had remained, steady, present, loyal. CTA number 1, approximately 250 words in. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The small house Marcus had rented was barely more than a shack, a one-room adobe structure with a corrugated metal roof and walls thick enough to keep out the worst of the desert heat. It sat alone on 20 acres of nothing. The nearest neighbor 5 miles down a dirt road that barely qualified as such. The landlord, an old rancher with sun-weathered skin and knowing eyes, had asked no questions when Marcus paid 3 months in cash. Men came to the desert for 2 reasons: to find themselves or to lose themselves. The rancher didn't care which. Inside, the house was Spartan. A narrow bed with military-tight corners, a small table with 1 chair, a camping stove, and a mini-fridge that hummed constantly. No television, no internet, no connection to the world Marcus was trying to forget. On the table sat a bottle of whiskey, half empty, and beside it a photograph. 5 men in combat gear, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera with the wild, invincible energy of warriors who believed they'd live forever. Marcus stared at that photo every night. His finger would trace the face of the man in the center, Staff Sergeant David Reaper Monroe, his team leader, his mentor, his friend, the man who had pushed him into cover and taken the snipers round himself, the man whose last words had been, "Get them home, Hale. Promise me." Marcus had gotten them home, all of them except Reaper. The guilt was a living thing, a weight that pressed on his chest every waking moment. The military had given him medals, commendations, and a medical discharge for PTSD. What they couldn't give him was absolution. So he had come here, to this desert grave of a house, to wrestle with ghosts and figure out if there was anything left of the man he used to be. His days fell into a brutal monastic routine. Up before dawn, a punishing workout that left his muscles screaming, push-ups until failure, pull-ups on the steel beam he'd installed over the door frame, a 5-mile run through the desert with Kaiser loping beside him. The pain was good. The pain was clean. It drowned out the memories of screaming, the smell of blood and cordite, the sight of Reaper's body going still in his arms. After the workout came patrol. Marcus and Kaiser would walk the perimeter of the property, then push out into the desert beyond, navigating arroyos and mesas with the same tactical precision they'd used in hostile territory. It wasn't necessary. There were no enemies here, no IEDs buried in the sand, but Marcus couldn't stop. Movement was survival. Stillness invited the ghosts. 40 miles north, in the small town of Tierra Roja, Officer Jenna Cardwell was finishing her shift. At 29, she was the youngest member of the Tierra Roja Police Department and one of only 2 women. She wore the uniform with quiet pride, pressed blues, polished badge, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Her face held the soft, open features of someone who still believed in the inherent goodness of people, though the job was slowly teaching her otherwise. Jenna had grown up in Tierra Roja, the daughter of a school teacher and a mechanic. She'd left for college, earned a degree in criminal justice, and returned home with the idealistic notion that she could make a difference. 5 years on the force had shown her the reality. Domestic disputes that never really ended, drug problems that metastasized in the shadows, poverty that ground people down until they had nothing left but anger. But she hadn't given up. Not yet. Beside her, in the passenger seat of her patrol unit, sat her partner, not human, but a 3-year-old Belgian Malinois named Zara. The dog was smaller than a German shepherd, but just as intelligent, with a fawn coat and a black mask that made her look perpetually serious. Zara had been trained for drug detection and tracking, and she was damn good at her job. More than that, she was Jenna's companion, her confidant, the reason she felt safe walking into situations that would otherwise terrify her. Tonight had been quiet. A welfare check on an elderly resident, a report of suspicious activity that turned out to be teenagers making out behind the old feed store. Normal, small-town police work. Jenna was looking forward to getting home, taking Zara for a walk and maybe watching a movie before bed. But as she drove past the industrial district on the edge of town, Zara suddenly went rigid. The dog's ears shot forward, her body tense as steel. A low whine escaped her throat, urgent and insistent. "What is it, girl?" Jenna asked, slowing the car. Zara's nose pressed against the window, her breath fogging the glass. She was fixated on something, the old Sandoval warehouse, a massive, rusting structure that had been abandoned for 15 years. The place was supposed to be empty, condemned, a relic of the town's brief industrial boom in the 90s. But Zara didn't react to empty buildings. Jenna pulled over, her training kicking in. She called dispatch. "This is Unit 3. I'm at the Sandoval warehouse on Industrial Drive. My K-9 is alerting, requesting backup for a wellness check." The dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Copy, Unit 3. Nearest unit is 20 minutes out. Do you want to wait?" Jenna looked at Zara. The dog's agitation was increasing, her whining growing louder. Something was wrong, very wrong, and 20 minutes might be too long. "Negative," Jenna said, making the decision. "I'm going in. Keep the line open." She clipped her radio to her belt, checked her service weapon, and opened the door. Zara bounded out immediately, nose to the ground, pulling toward the warehouse with singular focus. Jenna followed, her hand resting on her holster, every sense on high alert. The side door was unlocked. That was the first red flag. The second was the smell, chemical, acrid, burning the back of her throat. The third was the sound of footsteps, heavy and hurried, echoing from somewhere deep inside. "Tierra Roja Police," Jenna called out, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. "Identify yourself." The footsteps stopped. Then came laughter, cold, mocking, wrong. "Well, well," a voice drawled from the darkness. "Looks like we got ourselves a little hero." 3 figures emerged from the shadows like demons conjured from oil and rust. The leader was a man in his early 40s, tall and raw-boned, with the kind of face that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts, mismatched features held together by scar tissue and malice. His name was Clayton Voss, and he had a reputation that stretched across 3 states: drug trafficking, weapons dealing, and a string of violent assaults that never quite stuck in court because witnesses had a habit of disappearing. He wore a leather vest over a stained flannel shirt, his arms covered in tattoos that told the story of a life lived on the wrong side of every line. His eyes, pale blue and dead as ice, fixed on Jenna with the predatory focus of a man who had learned long ago that laws were for other people. Behind him stood 2 men cut from the same diseased cloth. The first was called Razor, a nickname earned from his preferred method of intimidation. He was shorter than Voss, built like a fire hydrant, with a shaved head and a collection of scars across his knuckles that spelled out violence in Braille. The second was Snake, lean and twitchy, with stringy blonde hair and the jittery energy of someone running on meth and bad decisions. They had been using the warehouse as a distribution hub for 3 months, moving product up from the border and spreading it across the desert towns like a cancer. It was a perfect setup, isolated, forgotten, invisible, until tonight. "You picked the wrong place to play cop, sweetheart," Voss said, taking a step forward. His smile was a slash of yellowed teeth. "This is private property. You got a warrant?" Jenna's hand remained on her weapon, but she didn't draw. Not yet. "This building is condemned. You're trespassing, and that smell tells me you're doing a lot more than trespassing." Voss laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. "Hear that, boys? She's got a nose on her." His eyes dropped to Zara, who stood rigid beside Jenna, a low growl rumbling in her chest. "Nice dog. Be a shame if something happened to it." "Step back," Jenna commanded, her voice hardening. "My backup is 2 minutes out. You walk away now. Maybe this doesn't get worse." It was a bluff. Her backup was still 15 minutes away, but she said it with enough conviction that Razor and Snake exchanged uncertain glances. Voss, however, didn't flinch. "See, that's where you're wrong, officer." He squinted at her name tag. "Cardwell, this is already as bad as it gets." He nodded to Razor, who moved with surprising speed. Before Jenna could react, he had circled behind her, cutting off her exit. Snake pulled a pistol from his waistband, leveling it at Zara. "Call off the dog, or I put it down," Snake hissed, his finger twitching on the trigger. Jenna's mind raced. She was outmanned, outgunned, and cut off from help. Zara's growl deepened, her muscles coiled to attack, but Jenna knew that if she gave the command, Snake would shoot. And once that happened, there would be no going back. "Zara, heel," she said quietly, her voice betraying none of the terror coursing through her veins. The dog obeyed instantly, moving to Jenna's side, though every line of her body screamed readiness. Voss stepped closer, his breath hot and rancid. "Smart girl. Now here's what's going to happen. You and your little mutt are going to take a walk with us, nice and quiet. And if you behave, maybe you live long enough to regret being so goddamn nosy." He reached for her weapon. Jenna's hand shot out, blocking him, but Razor grabbed her from behind, wrenching her arms back with brutal efficiency. Pain exploded up her shoulders as he forced her to her knees. Her radio clattered to the ground, the connection severed. "Feisty," Voss commented, almost appreciatively. "I like that. Too bad it won't matter in about 10 minutes. They dragged her deeper into the warehouse, Zara following with her head low, eyes never leaving her handler. The smell grew stronger. Chemicals, yes, but something else too. Something metallic and wrong. In the back corner, under a flickering fluorescent light, Jenna saw it. Rows of plastic barrels, stacks of precursor chemicals, and a makeshift lab where methamphetamine cooked in glass beakers like a devil's chemistry set. This wasn't just distribution. This was production, industrial scale. Millions of dollars worth of poison. And she had just stumbled into the middle of it. Voss shoved her against a support beam. Razor pulled out zip ties, binding her wrists behind her back with practiced ease. Snake kept his gun trained on Zara, his fingers still twitching nervously. "You know what's funny?" Voss said, crouching down to Jenna's level. "I actually respect you. Takes guts to walk in here alone, but guts don't mean shit when you're out of your depth." He stood, looking at his men. "Secure the dog. Then we figure out what to do with our little problem here." Jenna's mind screamed. This was it. This was how it ended. Tied up in a warehouse, killed by criminals whose names would be forgotten as soon as the next headline came along. She thought of her parents, of the disappointed looks on their faces when they heard. She thought of the idealism that had brought her back to this town, the belief that one person could make a difference. What a joke. But as Razor moved toward Zara, something changed in the dog's eyes. Her ears flicked toward the warehouse entrance, her nostrils flaring. She had caught a scent, something carried on the desert wind, something that made her entire body go still. Help was coming. She just had to survive long enough for it to arrive. The fluorescent light flickered and died, plunging half the warehouse into shadow. In the sudden dimness, Voss's face became a collection of harsh planes and cruel angles, a demon's mask lit from below by the chemical fires of his operation. "Well," he said, straightening up and looking down at Jenna like she was an insect he'd found under his boot. "Since we've got time before I decide what to do with you, how about you tell me something, Officer Cardwell? You got family?" Jenna's jaw tightened. She said nothing. Voss chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. "Silent treatment. I respect that. But see, I'm not really asking to be polite. I'm asking because I need to know who's going to come looking when you don't come home tonight. Is it just Mommy and Daddy? Or maybe you got a boyfriend, husband?" "Go to hell," Jenna spat. The blow came fast. Voss's backhand cracking across her face with enough force to snap her head sideways. Stars exploded behind her eyes and she tasted copper. Blood ran from her split lip, warm and slick. "Now, that's just rude," Voss said conversationally. He grabbed a fistful of her hair, yanking her head back so she was forced to look up at him. "I'm trying to have a civilized conversation here, and you're making it difficult." Zara lunged with a snarl that tore through the warehouse like a chainsaw. Snake stumbled backward, nearly dropping his gun, but Razor was ready. He swung a metal pipe, catching the dog mid-leap. Zara yelped, a sound of pain that cut through Jenna worse than any physical blow. The dog hit the concrete hard, rolling, dazed but not broken. "Touch her again and I'll kill you myself," Jenna snarled, straining against the zip ties that cut into her wrists. Voss released her hair and stood, brushing his hands off like he'd touched something distasteful. "See, that's the problem with cops. You think you're in control even when you're tied up and bleeding. It's cute, really, delusional, but cute." He walked over to where Zara was struggling to her feet, circled the dog slowly. "You know what I think? I think we should make this educational. Show you what happens when people stick their noses where they don't belong." He nodded to Snake. "The dog first. Let Officer Cardwell watch." "No," Jenna screamed, throwing herself forward despite the zip ties. "No, please. She's just a dog. She didn't do anything." "Exactly," Voss said coldly. "She's just a dog, and you're just a cop who should have minded her own business." Snake raised the pistol, taking aim at Zara's head. The dog was on her feet now, swaying slightly, her eyes still locked on Jenna with heartbreaking loyalty. She didn't understand what was happening, only that her handler was in danger and she couldn't reach her. Continue in CTA number 1 section, approximately 200 to 250 words in from section 4, start Jenna's world contracted to a single point. The muzzle of that gun, the space between life and death measured in a trigger pull. Every cell in her body screamed in helpless fury. She had joined the force to protect people, to make a difference, and now she couldn't even save her own partner. The weight of that failure was crushing, absolute. "Wait," Razor said, suddenly. Snake's finger paused on the trigger. Voss turned, irritated. "What? You hear that?" They all froze, listening. At first, there was nothing but the hum of the chemical operation and the desert wind whistling through gaps in the warehouse walls. Then Jenna heard it too, a sound so faint she might have imagined it. The crunch of gravel, footsteps, deliberate and cautious, moving along the outside of the building. Voss's eyes narrowed. "Back up? Can't be," Snake said nervously. "She never got the call out. Then who the hell—" The side door exploded inward with a metallic shriek, not kicked, torn off its hinges by a force that spoke of violent intent. Through the opening came a figure silhouetted against the dying light, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. And beside him, a shadow even darker, 95 pounds of German Shepherd fury. Marcus Hale had found them. Marcus had been on his evening patrol when Kaiser suddenly went rigid, every muscle in the dog's body locking tight. They were 3 miles from the house, picking their way along a dried riverbed that cut through the desert like an old scar. The sun was setting, painting the landscape in shades of blood and amber. "What is it, boy?" Marcus had asked, his hand instinctively moving to the knife sheathed at his belt. Out here, threats came in the form of rattlesnakes and the occasional coyote, nothing that required tactical alertness. But Kaiser wasn't reacting to wildlife. His ears were forward, his nose twitching as he tested the air. Then he barked, once sharp and urgent, and took off running. Not the easy lope of a dog on patrol, but a full sprint, paws tearing up sand and gravel as he raced north with single-minded determination. "Kaiser, heel!" Marcus commanded, but the dog ignored him. That alone was shocking. Kaiser never broke command. Never. Marcus ran after him, his conditioning and training allowing him to keep pace even as Kaiser pushed into a dead run. They covered 2 miles in 15 minutes, Marcus's lungs burning, sweat soaking through his shirt despite the cooling evening air. His mind was racing, cataloging possibilities. Whatever Kaiser had scented, it was bad. The dog's training was hardwired. He didn't react this way unless there was immediate danger. They crested a low ridge, and Marcus saw it. The Sandoval warehouse, a hulking shadow against the twilight. From this distance, it looked abandoned, but Kaiser was zeroed in on it like a missile locked on target. As they got closer, Marcus spotted the patrol unit parked behind a rusted dumpster. Emergency lights off, door ajar. Cop. His tactical mind kicked into high gear. Cop car, abandoned. Warehouse with lights on inside, no backup visible. Either the officer was conducting routine business or something had gone very, very wrong. Kaiser reached the warehouse first, circling the perimeter with his nose down, searching. Marcus caught up, his breathing controlled. Despite the run, he could hear voices inside, male, multiple, aggressive, and underneath that, a female voice. Young, scared but defiant. He moved to the side door, placed his ear against the metal. The voices became clearer. Just a dog. Should have minded her own business. The dog first. And then a scream. Female, desperate. "No, please. She's just a dog. She didn't do anything." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. A cop, a female cop, being held by multiple hostiles. And they were about to execute her K-9 partner while she watched. Time slowed. Marcus's vision sharpened, his heartbeat dropping into the calm, steady rhythm of combat mode. Every piece of training he'd accumulated over 16 years as a SEAL activated in an instant. Assess, plan, execute, 3 hostiles minimum based on the voices. 1 female officer, restrained, 1 K-9, injured but mobile. Unknown weapons configuration, no backup, no time for subtlety. He tried the door, locked. Kaiser pawed at it, whining urgently. Marcus stepped back, measured the door with his eyes, and then drove his boot into the frame just above the lock. The metal shrieked, bending inward. A second kick, and the door tore free, hanging from one hinge before crashing to the concrete floor. Marcus stepped through, Kaiser at his side, and instantly processed the scene with cold, tactical clarity. Warehouse floor, approximately 5,000 square feet. 3 males, 1 tall and lean, primary threat, leader profile, 1 stocky with scarring, secondary threat, enforcer, 1 thin and twitchy, tertiary threat, unstable, armed. Female officer zip-tied to support beam, bleeding from facial trauma. Belgian Malinois down but recovering, no apparent critical injuries. Drug lab operation in back corner, volatile chemicals, potential secondary hazard. Voss was the first to react, spinning toward the entrance with his hand dropping to his waistband. Snake had his pistol already drawn, swinging it away from Zara and toward Marcus. Razor grabbed a length of pipe, his face twisting into a snarl. "Who the fuck are you?" Voss demanded. Marcus didn't answer. Words were wasted breath in a tactical situation. Instead, he moved. Kaiser, reading his partner's body language like a language only they shared, exploded forward toward Snake, the immediate gun threat. The dog's training and natural aggression combined into a missile of fur and teeth. Snake screamed, trying to track Kaiser with his weapon, but the dog was too fast. 80 pounds of German Shepherd slammed into his chest, jaws locking onto his gun arm. The pistol clattered away, sliding across the concrete. While Kaiser neutralized the gun threat, Marcus closed the distance to Voss. The drug dealer yanked a revolver from his waistband, but Marcus was already inside his guard. He grabbed Voss's wrist with his left hand, twisting it outward and up with brutal efficiency, a joint lock that sent white-hot pain screaming up Voss's arm. With his right hand, Marcus drove a palm-heel strike into the man's solar plexus, a precise, devastating blow that shut down his diaphragm. Voss's mouth opened in a silent gasp, his face going purple as his body forgot how to breathe. The revolver fell from nerveless fingers. Marcus swept the man's legs, sending him crashing to the concrete, then stomped once on his gun hand. Bones cracked. Voss screamed, the sound thin and wheezing. Razor charged with the pipe raised high, a wild haymaker swing that would have caved in Marcus's skull if it had connected. But Marcus had spent 16 years learning how to read violence, how to see attacks before they happened. He sidestepped, letting the pipe whistle past his head, then drove his elbow into Razor's temple, a pinpoint strike that scrambled the man's brain like eggs. Razor dropped like a sack of meat, unconscious before he hit the ground. 8 seconds. 3 threats neutralized. Marcus straightened, his breathing calm, his hands loose at his sides. The transformation was complete. From isolated hermit to operator, as smooth and natural as flipping a switch. This was what he'd been built to do. This was what he was. Across the warehouse, Kaiser had Snake pinned, jaws locked on the man's forearm, a low growl vibrating through the dog's chest. Snake was crying, pleading. All his earlier bravado evaporated in the face of 80 pounds of controlled violence. "Release," Marcus commanded quietly. Kaiser obeyed instantly, stepping back but remaining alert, his eyes fixed on Snake. The man curled into a ball, whimpering, cradling his mangled arm. Marcus's gaze finally shifted to the woman zip-tied to the beam. Officer Jenna Cardwell stared at him with wide eyes, not fear, but shock mixed with something like awe. Blood trickled from her split lip, and the beginning of a bruise was forming on her cheek, but she was alive, conscious, unbroken. "You okay?" Marcus asked, his voice rough from disuse. Jenna blinked, finding her voice. Who are you?" Marcus pulled a folding knife from his pocket, moved to her side, and sliced through the zip ties in one smooth motion. Her hands were free. She rubbed her wrists, circulation returning with painful pins and needles. "Nobody," Marcus said simply. Then he knelt beside Zara, running his hands gently over the dog's ribs and skull, checking for serious injury. The Malinois had a nasty welt along her shoulder, but nothing broken. She leaned into his touch, recognizing a kindred spirit, another warrior who understood what it meant to fight beside humans. "Your partner's tough," Marcus said, looking up at Jenna. "She'll be fine." Jenna stumbled over to Zara, dropping to her knees and wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. Tears streaked through the dust on her face, and she pressed her face into Zara's fur, breathing in the familiar scent of her partner, alive and safe. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Marcus stood, scanning the warehouse one more time. Voss was still gasping for air, his crushed hand cradled against his chest. Razor was out cold. Snake was crying. The immediate threat was contained, but Marcus's tactical mind was still running scenarios. Where there were 3, there might be more. Backup, lookouts. This operation was too big for just 3 men. "You called for backup?" he asked Jenna. She nodded, wiping her eyes. "They should be here in about 10 minutes, maybe less." "Good. We need to—" Kaiser's bark cut him off. Sharp, warning. The German shepherd had moved to the back of the warehouse near the chemical lab, his body rigid. Marcus's blood went cold. He recognized that stance. That was Kaiser's alert for explosives. "Get out," he said quietly to Jenna. "Now." "What?" "Why, they booby-trapped the lab. Move." But before either of them could reach the exit, headlights swept across the warehouse entrance. Not the flashing red and blue of police vehicles. These were high beams, harsh and white, from multiple trucks pulling up fast. More of Voss's crew, coming to check on their operation, coming armed and ready for trouble. Marcus grabbed Jenna's arm, pulling her behind a stack of pallets. Kaiser and Zara followed, both dogs silent and alert. Through gaps in the pallets, Marcus counted vehicles. 3 trucks, at least 2 men per vehicle, 6 to 8 hostiles, all armed. "This just keeps getting better," Jenna muttered, her hand moving to her empty holster. Her service weapon was still on the ground somewhere, near where Voss had torn it from her. Marcus handed her his knife without a word. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then he picked up Snake's drop pistol, checked the magazine, 6 rounds, and chambered 1. Not ideal, but enough if he made every shot count. "When they come through that door," Marcus said quietly, "you run for your patrol car. Take the dogs. Call for backup. Tell them officer needs assistance, shots fired, multiple hostiles. Then get the hell out of here." Jenna stared at him. "What are you going to do?" Marcus's expression was calm, almost serene. "Buy you time. That's suicide. There are too many of them." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "There are." He looked at Kaiser, and something passed between them. An understanding forged in 100 firefights, and shared trauma and unbreakable bond. The dog's tail wagged once, slowly. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Outside, car doors slammed, voices, low and urgent, footsteps approaching. 3 years ago, Marcus said suddenly, his eyes still on the entrance, my team leader took a bullet meant for me. His last words were, "Get them home." I did. All of them except him. He looked at Jenna, really looked at her, and she saw it. The weight he carried, the guilt that had driven him into the desert to die slowly. "I'm not letting anyone else die on my watch. Not tonight." "You don't even know me," Jenna whispered. Marcus's smile was slight, sad. "Doesn't matter." The warehouse doors burst open. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Voices shouting, demanding to know what the hell had happened. Marcus stepped out from behind the pallets, the pistol held in a 2-handed grip, his stance textbook perfect. Kaiser moved to his left side, a silent shadow ready to strike. "Federal officer," Marcus barked, his voice carrying the unmistakable weight of command. It was a lie. He hadn't been federal anything in months, but it didn't matter. The authority in his tone was real, earned through years of leading men into hell. "Drop your weapons and get on the ground, now!" For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then someone laughed, and the shooting started. The first shot came from Marcus's pistol, a controlled double tap that dropped the lead hostile before the man even processed what was happening. The body fell with a wet thud, and chaos erupted. Muzzle flashes lit up the warehouse like strobe lights in hell. Marcus moved on pure instinct, years of combat experience guiding his body without conscious thought. He dove behind a support beam as bullets chewed through the air where he'd been standing, concrete exploding in dust and fragments. Kaiser was already moving, a blur of dark fur racing along the wall, using the shadows and clutter as cover. 6 hostiles. Marcus's mind counted automatically. 2 down, Voss and his crew inside, plus the one he'd just dropped. 4 still active. No cover within 20 feet. Jenna pinned behind pallets. Dogs exposed if they moved. Classic kill box. Marcus fired twice more, one round taking a hostile in the shoulder, spinning him around, the second catching another in the thigh. Both went down screaming. Not dead, but out of the fight. That left 2. But his slide locked back. Empty. He dropped the pistol, his hands already moving to the fallen hostile's body, searching for a weapon. His fingers found a rifle. Cheap AR-15 knockoff, but functional. He yanked it free, checked the action, found it loaded. "Kaiser, left flank," Marcus commanded in German. "Links." The German shepherd burst from cover, charging the hostile on the left with tactical precision. The man turned, trying to track the dog with his shotgun, but Kaiser was too fast, too trained. He hit low, jaws locking onto the man's calf, pulling him off balance. The shotgun discharged into the ceiling, the boom deafening in the enclosed space. Marcus used the distraction. He rolled from cover, came up in a crouch, and fired a 3-round burst center mass. The remaining hostile dropped, his weapon clattering away. The shotgun wielder was on the ground, Kaiser maintaining his grip, the dog's growl a continuous rumble of controlled aggression. Silence fell like a curtain. The acrid smell of gunpowder hung thick in the air, mixing with the chemical stench from the lab. Marcus's ears rang, his heart hammering against his ribs, but his hands were steady. Combat steady. He moved through the warehouse with tactical precision, clearing each body. 2 dead, 4 wounded and disarmed, threats neutralized. His movements were automatic, muscle memory from 1,000 training drills, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about Reaper, about Kandahar, about the promise he'd made. Get them home. "Clear," he called out, lowering the rifle. Jenna emerged from behind the pallets, her face pale but determined. Zara limped beside her, favoring her injured shoulder but alert. The officer's eyes swept the carnage, taking in the bodies, the spent brass glittering on the concrete, the man Marcus had just saved her from becoming. "Jesus Christ," she breathed, "who the hell are you?" Before Marcus could answer, Kaiser's ears pricked up. A new sound. Sirens, multiple units, growing louder. Backup had finally arrived. "You need to go," Jenna said suddenly, urgently. "When they get here, they're going to want statements, reports. They'll want to know who did this." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not running. You killed 2 men. Maybe more. Even if it was self-defense, even if you saved my life, they're going to investigate. It could take months, maybe years if the county prosecutor gets involved. I know. You're military, aren't you? The way you move, the way you handle a weapon. Navy SEAL?" Marcus said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Jenna stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Then you know what happens next. The paperwork, the questions, the psych evals. They'll dig into your service record, your medical history, everything. Is that what you want?" Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. This woman he didn't know, this cop he'd saved because Kaiser had led him here. She was right. Getting involved meant exposure, meant dragging all his ghosts back into the light. It meant confronting the past he'd spent 3 months trying to bury in the desert. But walking away meant being the man who had let Reaper die. The man who ran when others needed him. The man who chose isolation over honor. "What I want doesn't matter," Marcus said quietly. "What's right does." CTA number 2 placement, approximately 50% mark, around 4,500, 5,750 words in. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. Red and blue lights washed across the warehouse walls. Car doors slammed. Voices shouting commands, establishing perimeter, calling for medical. Marcus set the rifle down carefully, raised his hands, and walked toward the entrance. Kaiser followed, staying close, protective even in surrender. The first officer through the door was a grizzled sergeant in his 50s, weapon drawn, eyes hard and professional. He took in the scene, bodies, blood, the wrecked drug lab, in one sweeping glance. Then his gaze locked onto Marcus, standing calmly with his hands raised. "On the ground. Now. Face down. Hands behind your head." Marcus complied without resistance, moving slowly and deliberately to show he wasn't a threat. The concrete was cold against his cheek, grit digging into his skin. He felt hands on him, rough, efficient, patting him down, securing his wrists with cuffs. Standard procedure. He'd done the same thing himself 100 times on deployment. "Wait!" Jenna's voice cut through the chaos. She limped forward, Zara at her side. "Sergeant Bowman, stand down. He's not the enemy." Bowman looked at her, took in her battered appearance, the blood on her face, and his expression shifted from suspicion to concern. "Cardwell, Jesus, we thought, are you hurt?" "I'm fine, but I wouldn't be if not for him." She pointed at Marcus. "He saved my life, saved Zara's life. Those men were going to execute us." Bowman's eyes narrowed. "Who is he?" "I don't know," Jenna admitted. "He never told me his name, but I know what he is. A soldier, a protector, a damn hero." The EMTs arrived, flooding the warehouse with organized chaos. They went to work on the wounded, stabilizing, loading onto stretchers. Jenna refused treatment at first, insisting they check Zara before her, but a young female paramedic was insistent. "You're going to the hospital, Officer Cardwell. That's not a request." While Jenna was being examined, Marcus remained seated on the ground, hands still cuffed behind his back. Sergeant Bowman stood over him, radio in hand, running names and checking records. Other officers were processing the scene, taking photographs, collecting evidence. One of the wounded men, Razor, regaining consciousness, pointed at Marcus with his good hand. "That psycho tried to kill us. He came in here shooting. We were just—" "Shut up," Bowman said wearily. "We found 20 kilos of meth and enough precursor chemicals to make another 100. Whatever story you're selling, I'm not buying." A detective arrived, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She introduced herself as Detective Sarah Mendoza, County Homicide. She crouched beside Marcus, studying him with the intensity of someone who read people for a living. "You want to tell me what happened here?" she asked, her tone neutral. Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Officer Cardwell stumbled onto a drug operation. They took her hostage. I intervened." "You intervened? That's one way to put it." Mendoza glanced at the body bags being wheeled out. 2 dead, 4 wounded. You former military?" "Yes, ma'am." "Navy SEAL?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded once. Mendoza's expression shifted subtly, not quite respect, but acknowledgement. That explains the efficiency. She pulled out a notepad. I'm going to need a full statement. Name, service history, why you were in the area, the works. Marcus Hale. Lieutenant, retired. SEAL Team 5. I'm on medical leave. He paused. I came to the desert to be alone. My dog led me here. That's all there is to it. Your dog led you to an active crime scene. That's quite a coincidence. Kaiser's a military working dog, trained for patrol and protection. He smelled Officer Cardwell's K9, sensed the danger. Instinct. Mendoza made notes, her pen scratching across paper. And you just happened to be armed. I'm always armed. Old habits. Lucky for Officer Cardwell. Mendoza closed her notepad, standing. She looked at Bowman. Get those cuffs off him. He's not a suspect, he's a witness. Bowman hesitated. Detective, procedure. Procedure is, I'm the senior investigator, and I'm telling you to uncuff the man who saved one of your officers. Do it. The cuffs came off. Marcus rubbed his wrists, the circulation returning in painful tingles. Kaiser immediately pressed against his side, and Marcus rested a hand on the dog's head, drawing comfort from the familiar contact. Jenna approached, her face cleaned up, a butterfly bandage over her split lip. She'd refused transport to the hospital, insisting she could give her statement first. When she reached Marcus, she held out her hand. Officer Jenna Cardwell, Tierra Roja PD. I owe you my life. Marcus shook her hand, his grip firm but brief. You don't owe me anything. The hell I don't. You took on 6 armed men to save a complete stranger. That's not nothing. It's what any... Don't, Jenna interrupted. Don't say, it's what anyone would do, because we both know that's bullshit. Most people would have kept walking. You didn't. Why? Marcus looked at Kaiser, then back at Jenna. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. 3 years ago, my team leader died protecting me. He made me promise to get our guys home safe. I did. All except him. He swallowed hard. Tonight, your K9 partner was about to die protecting you. I couldn't let that happen again. I couldn't watch another partner take a bullet while I stood by. Understanding dawned in Jenna's eyes, followed by sympathy so genuine it made Marcus's chest ache. You're carrying that guilt, the survivor's guilt, every day. Then you should know something, Jenna said softly. Your team leader, the reason he took that bullet was because he knew you'd do exactly what you did tonight. He knew you'd keep fighting, keep protecting people. That's who you are. That's what SEALs do. She paused. You didn't fail him, Lieutenant Hale. You're honoring him, every single day. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Marcus felt something crack inside him. A wall he'd built around his grief, his guilt, his worthlessness. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he blinked them back, jaw clenched tight. Thank you, he managed, his voice rough. Jenna squeezed his shoulder once, then turned to Mendoza. He's clear, right? No charges? Self-defense and defense of another. Clean as it gets. Mendoza looked at Marcus. You're free to go, Lieutenant, though we'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow for a formal statement. Marcus nodded, already moving toward the exit. He'd done what he came to do. Now he just wanted to get back to the desert, back to the silence. But as he reached the doorway, a news van pulled up, camera crew already deploying. A reporter, young and hungry for a story, rushed forward. Is it true a Navy SEAL saved a police officer tonight? Sir, can we get a statement? Bowman stepped in front of Marcus, blocking the camera. No comment. This is an active investigation." But the reporter had already gotten footage. Marcus's face, Kaiser at his side, the warehouse behind them. By morning, it would be all over the local news, probably picked up by national outlets. Former Navy SEAL stops drug operation, saves officer's life. His quiet life in the desert was officially over. Marcus found a quiet corner outside the warehouse, away from the chaos of the investigation. Kaiser lay at his feet, exhausted but content, his job done. The dog's eyes were half closed, but his ears still tracked every sound, ever vigilant. Jenna found them there 20 minutes later. She'd finally agreed to let the EMTs take a look at her, and now she had a proper bandage on her cheek and a sling for her bruised shoulder. Zara walked beside her, the Malinois moving more easily now that the vet had cleared her. "Hey," Jenna said, sitting down carefully on the concrete step beside Marcus. "Mind if I join you? Free country." They sat in silence for a while, watching the controlled chaos of the crime scene. More units had arrived, DEA, ATF, even FBI, given the scale of the operation. This wasn't just a local drug bust anymore. This was major. "They're saying this operation was tied to a cartel," Jenna said quietly. "Moving product through the desert corridor. They've been looking for this distribution hub for months. You walked into something bigger than you knew. Story of my life." She smiled weakly. "Kaiser's amazing, by the way. I've never seen a K9 move like that. It's like he knew exactly what to do. He's been doing it for 6 years. It's second nature to him." 6 years. Jenna shook her head. "And you just happened to be out for an evening walk when all this went down?" Marcus's smile was slight. "Something like that. Well, whatever higher power guided you here, I'm grateful." She looked at Zara, then at Kaiser. "Our dogs saved us tonight. Both of them." Marcus watched as Zara cautiously approached Kaiser. The two dogs sniffed each other, a ritual of recognition and respect. Then Zara lay down beside the German shepherd, close enough to touch. Kaiser's tail thumped once against the concrete. "Partners," Marcus said softly. "They recognize each other." Jenna nodded, her throat tight. "Warriors." An EMT approached. "Officer Cardwell, we really need to get you to the hospital. You might have a concussion." Jenna sighed, standing carefully. Okay. I'm coming." She looked down at Marcus. "Thank you again, for everything. Take care of yourself, Officer Cardwell, and watch your six." "Always?" She hesitated, then added, "If you ever need anything, Lieutenant Hale, a friend, someone to talk to, anything, you call me, okay? You saved my life. That makes us family." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. He watched her walk away, Zara limping beside her, 2 survivors heading toward recovery. When they were gone, Marcus stood, his body aching from the adrenaline crash. Kaiser rose with him, pressing close. Together, they walked back to Marcus's truck, parked a mile away in the desert darkness. The drive back to the adobe house was quiet, but for the first time in 3 months, the silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt like peace. The call came at 3:47 a.m., jolting Marcus from the first deep sleep he'd had in months. He answered on the second ring, his voice clear despite the hour. SEALs learned early how to go from unconscious to fully alert in seconds. "Lieutenant Hale, this is Detective Mendoza. I apologize for the hour, but we have a situation." Marcus sat up, Kaiser immediately alert beside him. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where people start dying." Mendoza's voice was grim. "2 of the men you wounded tonight, Voss and Razor, they're dead, poisoned in their hospital beds 2 hours ago, and Officer Cardwell's house was broken into. She wasn't home, thank God, but someone left a message. Marcus's blood went cold. What message? 3 words spray-painted on her bedroom wall. "You're next, bitch," with a picture of a dog's head. They're going after her K9. Marcus was already moving, pulling on jeans and boots, his mind clicking into mission mode. Where is she now? Safe house. But Lieutenant, this is bigger than we thought. The DEA ran the prints from the warehouse. That operation was connected to the Salazar cartel. We're not dealing with local thugs anymore. We're dealing with professionals who don't like witnesses. How many others were there that night? How many got away? We're not sure. Forensics found evidence of at least 3 more people on site. Footprints, cigarette butts, DNA. They scattered when the shooting started. Now they're cleaning up loose ends. Marcus grabbed his go bag, the one that had been packed since his first deployment and never fully unpacked. "Send me the address of the safe house. I'm coming in." "Lieutenant, this isn't your fight anymore. We have protection details." "With all due respect, Detective, those protection details didn't stop 2 men from being killed in a guarded hospital. Send me the address." There was a pause, then a sigh. "I'll text it to you. And Lieutenant, I'm glad you're on our side." Marcus drove through the pre-dawn darkness, Kaiser in the passenger seat, both of them silent and focused. The adrenaline from the warehouse fight had long since faded, replaced by the cold, calculating clarity of a SEAL on a mission. This wasn't random violence anymore. This was targeted elimination of witnesses. And Jenna was next on the list. The safe house was a modest ranch home on the outskirts of Tierra Roja, surrounded by open desert and with clear sight lines in all directions. Good defensive position. Marcus approved. 2 patrol cars were parked out front, and he could see movement inside, officers on rotation maintaining security. Mendoza met him at the door, looking exhausted. "She's inside. Won't sleep, won't eat, just sits there with her dog staring at the walls." "Can I see her?" "That's why I called you." Jenna was in the living room, curled up in an overstuffed chair with Zara's head resting on her lap. She looked up when Marcus entered, and relief flooded her features. "You came." "Of course." Marcus pulled up a chair, sitting across from her. Kaiser immediately moved to Zara, the 2 dogs touching noses in greeting. "Detective Mendoza told me what happened. They killed Voss and Razor, poisoned them. The hospital has cameras everywhere, security, nurses doing rounds every hour. And someone still got to them." Her voice trembled. "If they can reach inside a hospital, they can reach me anywhere." "Not anywhere," Marcus said firmly. "Not if we're smart about this." "We? You saved my dog's life when you called for backup, even though you were in danger yourself. You think I'm walking away now?" Marcus leaned forward. "I'm a SEAL, Officer Cardwell. We have a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. Every day is a fight, but we don't fight alone. We fight as a team." Jenna's eyes filled with tears. "I don't even know why they want me dead. I didn't see anything that could identify them, just voices in the dark." "You saw the operation. You can testify that it exists, that it's connected to multiple deaths. That makes you dangerous to people who've spent millions building that network." Marcus glanced at Mendoza. "We need the FBI's cartel task force on this. Local PD can't handle this level of threat." Mendoza nodded. "Already reached out. They're sending an agent tomorrow morning. Not good enough. They need to be here now." "It's not that simple." "Make it simple." Marcus's voice hardened with command authority. "You have a police officer marked for death by one of the most violent cartels in North America. You have a witness who can testify to millions of dollars in drug trafficking, and you have maybe 24 hours before they try again. This isn't a local matter anymore. This is federal, and it needs federal resources." Mendoza stared at him for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. "I'll make the call." While Mendoza stepped outside, Marcus turned back to Jenna. "I need you to tell me everything. Every detail from that night. Who spoke, what they said, any names, descriptions, anything that might help us identify who else was there." Jenna closed her eyes, thinking. "There was a phone call right before you showed up. Voss answered it. He said, tell Martinez we're on schedule. The shipment moves tomorrow night." Then he listened, and his face changed. He said, "What do you mean someone's watching? No, we swept the area. There's no surveillance." Another pause. Then, "Fine, I'll move the girl, but Martinez isn't going to like the delays." Marcus's mind raced. Martinez. That was a name, a starting point. What else? When the backup arrived, Voss's crew, one of them said something in Spanish. I only caught part of it. Something about El Jefe being angry. That's the boss, right? Right, El Jefe. That's cartel terminology. Marcus pulled out his phone, making a note. "This is good. This helps. What about the warehouse itself? Did you see anything unusual? Equipment, vehicles, anything that didn't fit a standard drug lab?" Jenna frowned, concentrating. "There were shipping containers in the back, industrial ones. They had logos, some shipping company. I couldn't read the full name, but it started with Trans something. Transcontinental? Transpacific? Maybe. And there were computers, like a lot of them. Servers, maybe. It seemed weird for a drug lab." Marcus went still. Computers, servers. That changed everything. They weren't just manufacturing, they were coordinating. That warehouse was a hub, manufacturing, distribution, and logistics. Mendoza returned, her expression grim. "FBI is sending a team. ETA 2 hours. But there's more bad news. We just got word. Another body turned up. Local informant who'd been feeding DEA information about cartel activity. Shot 3 times, execution style, dumped on the highway." The room went silent. "They're accelerating the timeline," Marcus said quietly. "They know we're onto something, and they're eliminating everyone who knows anything. Jenna's not just a witness anymore. She's a liability they have to eliminate before we can put the pieces together." "So, what do we do?" Jenna asked, her voice small. Marcus met her eyes, his expression resolute. "We don't wait for them to come to us. We go on the offensive." The FBI arrived at dawn. A 4-person team led by Special Agent Elena Vargas, a woman in her 40s with steel-gray eyes and the bearing of someone who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer and refused to blink. She listened to Marcus's briefing with the focused intensity of a predator tracking prey. "You're right about the warehouse being a logistics hub," she said, spreading crime scene photos across the table. "We've been tracking the Salazar cartel's expansion into New Mexico for 18 months. They've been smart, staying under the radar, using local criminals as cutouts. But this," she tapped the photo of the servers, "this is their mistake. They got ambitious." "How so?" Mendoza asked. "Because servers mean data, and data means records, communications, transactions, distribution routes. If we can access those servers before they scrub them, we can dismantle their entire network." Marcus nodded slowly. "But they'll be moving them. Soon. Maybe within hours." "Exactly. Which is why we need to move. Faster." Vargas looked at Jenna. "Officer Cardwell, I need you to work with our forensic artist. We're going to create composite sketches of everyone you saw or heard that night. Every detail matters. For the next 3 hours, the safe house became a war room. Vargas's team set up computers, ran background checks, cross-referenced cartel databases. Jenna worked with the forensic artist, describing faces she'd glimpsed in the chaos. Marcus and Kaiser conducted perimeter sweeps, ensuring no one was surveilling the house. By midday, they had a breakthrough. "The shipping containers," one of the agents announced, looking up from his laptop. "Transcontinental Shipping is a front company registered in Mexico. It's owned by a shell corporation that traces back to known Salazar associates. We've got the connection." Vargas allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Now we need to find where they moved the operation." Marcus studied the map spread across the table, a detailed topographical chart of the region. His finger traced potential routes, analyzing terrain, access points, defensive positions. "Here," he said, tapping a location 30 miles south. "Old mining operation, isolated, road access, building still intact. Perfect for a temporary staging point." "How do you know?" Mendoza asked. "Because if I were running this operation, that's where I'd go. It's defensible, off the main routes, and big enough to house the servers and product while they regroup." Vargas studied the map, then nodded. "Recon mission, small team, in and out. If it's there, we call in tactical." "I'm going," Marcus said immediately. "Lieutenant Hale, this is an FBI operation." "With all due respect, Agent Vargas, I've conducted more reconnaissance missions than anyone in this room. I know how to move unseen, how to assess threats, and how to get out if things go sideways. You need me." Vargas considered, then looked at Mendoza. "He's your witness. Your call." Mendoza glanced at Marcus, saw the determination in his eyes, and sighed. "He goes, but he wears a wire and he doesn't engage unless absolutely necessary." "Agreed." They prepped quickly. Marcus changed into dark tactical clothing, black cargo pants, long-sleeve shirt, lightweight boots. He carried minimal gear, binoculars, camera, knife, and a compact .45 pistol as backup. No heavy weapons, nothing that would slow him down. This was reconnaissance, not assault. Kaiser wore a tactical vest with a mounted camera. The dog's perspective would give them additional intel. The German, Shepard, seemed to understand the gravity of the mission, his demeanor shifting from companion to operator. Before they left, Jenna approached Marcus. "Be careful. If anything happens to you because of me." "Nothing's going to happen," Marcus said firmly. "This is what I do, what I'm trained for. I'll be back before you know it." "Promise?" Marcus looked at her. This brave woman who'd walked into hell and survived, who cared more about a stranger's safety than her own, and found himself smiling. "Promise." The drive to the mining site took 45 minutes, the last 10 on a barely maintained dirt road that wound through rugged terrain. Marcus parked the truck 2 miles out and proceeded on foot, Kaiser moving silently beside him. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the desert. Perfect timing. Not dark enough to need night vision, but low enough light to provide concealment. Marcus moved like a ghost, using every bit of cover, staying off ridge lines, avoiding silhouettes. Through his binoculars, he spotted it. The old mining complex, exactly where he'd predicted. And there, in the dusty yard, were the shipping containers from the warehouse. Figures moved around them, at least 6 men, all armed, all alert. Kaiser's camera transmitted everything back to the FBI team. Marcus whispered into his microphone, his voice barely audible. "Target confirmed. 6 hostiles visible, probably more inside, containers intact, multiple vehicles, trucks, SUVs. Looks like they're preparing to move out. Vargas's voice crackled in his earpiece. Copy that. Pulling back. Repeat. Pull back. We've got what we need. But Kaiser had frozen, his ears locked on something Marcus couldn't see. The dog's nose twitched, analyzing a scent carried on the desert wind. Then he growled. Low, urgent, warning. Contact, Marcus whispered, dropping flat behind a boulder. A figure emerged from behind the containers. Even at this distance, Marcus recognized the walk, the build. This wasn't a cartel sicario. This was someone different. Someone with military bearing. The man pulled out a phone, made a call. Marcus strained to hear, but the distance was too great. Then the man turned, and Marcus saw his face clearly through the binoculars. His blood ran cold. That face? He knew that face. Vargas, Marcus said urgently, we have a problem. The man at the mining site was Diego Cortez, Marcus's former teammate from SEAL Team 5. They'd deployed together twice, fought side by side in Ramadi and Kandahar. Diego had been the team's breacher, a specialist in explosives and close-quarters combat. He'd been discharged 2 years ago under circumstances that were never fully explained. Now he was here, working security for a Mexican cartel. Vargas, do you copy? Marcus repeated. One of the subjects is a former Navy SEAL, Diego Cortez. He'll recognize my approach signatures, my tactics. He's trained in counter-surveillance. Shit, Vargas hissed. Pull back now. This just became a whole lot more complicated. But Marcus was already moving. Not away, toward. Because if Diego was here, it meant the situation was far more dangerous than they'd realized. A trained SEAL could turn this raid into a bloodbath. FBI tactical teams were good, but they weren't prepared to face someone with Diego's skills. There was only one way this ended cleanly. Marcus had to take Diego out of the equation before the raid began. Hale, what are you doing? Vargas demanded. I said, pull back. Can't do that, Agent. If Diego spots your tactical team coming, he'll rain hell. I'm the only one who can get close enough to neutralize him. God damn it, Hale. Marcus switched off his radio. Kaiser followed without command, both of them moving through the gathering dusk with practiced silence. They circled wide, using the terrain, approaching from the direction Diego wouldn't expect. From above, along the ridgeline where the sun was already sinking, creating blind spots. It took 20 minutes of careful movement. When Marcus finally had position, he was 30 yards from Diego, separated by a series of mining equipment and rusted machinery. Close enough to hear voices now. Diego was on the phone, his tone professional but tense. No, Martinez isn't happy about the delay, but what was I supposed to do? The cops stumbled onto it. We had to move. No, I said I can handle it. My team is solid. Yes, I know about the witness. She's being dealt with. By tomorrow, this whole mess goes away. Marcus's jaw tightened. Diego was planning Jenna's death. His brother in arms, the man he'd trusted with his life, had become the thing they'd sworn to fight. He keyed his radio back on, voice barely a whisper. Vargas, confirm what I'm hearing. Subject is discussing plans to eliminate Officer Cardwell. Copy that. We're recording everything. Whole position. Tactical team is 10 minutes out. 10 minutes. An eternity in combat time. But Marcus held, watching, waiting for the right moment. Diego ended his call and turned, scanning the perimeter with professional paranoia. His eyes swept across the ridgeline where Marcus was hidden, and for a heart-stopping moment, their gazes seemed to lock. Then Diego smiled. I know you're up there, Hale. Kaiser's vest is transmitting a signal. basic tradecraft. Marcus went cold. Diego had been tracking them the entire time. "Come on down," Diego called out. "Let's talk, for old time's sake." Marcus stood slowly, hands visible, Kaiser remaining hidden. He descended the slope carefully, knowing that 6 rifle barrels were probably trained on him right now. Diego was waiting, relaxed but alert, a pistol holstered at his hip. Up close, he looked older, harder. The easy smile Marcus remembered was gone, replaced by something cynical and cold. "Didn't expect to see you out here," Diego said. "Thought you were hiding in the desert, drowning in guilt over Reaper." "I'm past that now." "Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man who's just finding new ways to get himself killed." Diego shook his head. "That cop, the warehouse, you should have walked away. And let them murder an innocent woman. That's not who we are." "Who we were," Diego corrected. "That life's over, Marcus. The honor, the brotherhood, the mission, it was all bullshit. The government doesn't care about us. They use us up and throw us away. But the cartel, they pay. They respect skills. They don't pretend to be something they're not. They're murderers. So were we. We just had better PR." Diego's hand moved toward his weapon. "Walk away, Marcus, for old time's sake. There's no saving this cop. Martinez wants her dead, and what Martinez wants, he gets. Can't do that. Then you're going to die here. Maybe, but so are you." Diego's smile was sad. "Yeah, probably." The world slowed. Both men's hands moved simultaneously. Decades of training, muscle memory, the dance of violence they'd practiced 10,000 times. But Marcus was faster. A fraction of a second, but enough. His round took Diego center mass, dropping him before his weapon cleared the holster. The other cartel soldiers opened fire, bullets tearing through the air, but Marcus was already moving, rolling behind cover, Kaiser a shadow beside him. The FBI tactical team stormed the complex. Flashbangs, shouted commands, overwhelming force. It was over in 90 seconds. When the dust settled, Diego lay in the dirt, bleeding but alive. His eyes found Marcus and he coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Good shot, brother," he whispered. "Medic," Marcus called, pressing his hand against the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. "Hang on, Diego. Just hang on." "Why?" Diego's voice was fading. "It's over. I'm done. Because you're still my brother, and we don't leave anyone behind." Diego's eyes closed. The medics arrived, working frantically. Marcus stepped back, his hands covered in his friend's blood, and felt the weight of it. Another ghost to add to his collection. But Jenna was safe. That's what mattered. The federal courthouse in Albuquerque was a fortress of glass and steel, imposing and cold. Marcus sat in the gallery, wearing his dress uniform for the first time in months. The Navy service khakis he'd packed away, thinking he'd never wear them again. The rows of ribbons on his chest told a story of valor. Bronze star with V device, 2 Purple Hearts, the Combat Action Ribbon, and countless others. Jenna sat beside him in her police dress blues, Zara at her feet. The dog wore her K9 unit badge, polished to a shine. On Marcus's other side, Kaiser lay in a perfect downstay, every inch the military working dog he'd been trained to be. At the defendant's table sat 7 men, the surviving members of the Salazar cartel's distribution network. They wore expensive suits and blank expressions, their lawyers whispering strategies. But they all knew how this would end. The evidence was overwhelming. The lead prosecutor, an intense woman named Rebecca Foster, presented her case with surgical precision. The defendants orchestrated a multi-state drug trafficking operation responsible for distributing over $200 million worth of methamphetamine. They murdered witnesses, corrupted officials, and destroyed countless lives in pursuit of profit. She called Jenna to the stand. The young officer walked to the witness box with quiet dignity, her hand briefly touching Zara's head as she passed. For 90 minutes, she testified about that night in the warehouse, the lab, the threats, the men who'd nearly killed her. The defense attorney tried to rattle her. "Isn't it true, Officer Cardwell, that you entered that warehouse without a warrant? That everything you claim to have seen could be considered fruit of the poisonous tree?" Jenna met his gaze steadily. "I entered in response to my K-9's alert, which gave me probable cause. I observed illegal activity in plain sight. And I would have died if not for the intervention of Lieutenant Marcus Hale, whose heroism saved my life and broke this case wide open." The attorney tried another angle. "You were traumatized, injured, in fear for your life. Isn't it possible your memories of that night are unreliable?" "No," Jenna said firmly. "I remember everything, every face, every word, every moment I thought I was going to die. You don't forget something like that." When Marcus was called to testify, the courtroom went silent. Even the defendants seemed to recognize what they were seeing. A warrior, a man who'd fought in the worst places on earth and emerged unbreakable. Prosecutor Foster led him through the events of that night, and Marcus described it all with calm, precise detail. The approach, the tactical assessment, the decision engage. "Lieutenant Hale," Foster said, "you put yourself at extreme risk to save a stranger. Why?" Marcus looked at Jenna, then at the jury. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because I'm a SEAL, and SEALs protect the innocent. And because my team leader once told me that the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching, it's what he does when no one would ever know. Officer Cardwell needed help, and I was there. It's that simple." The defense had no questions for him. What could they possibly ask? The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. The judge, a stern man in his 60s, sentenced them to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. "You brought poison into our communities, destroyed families, and showed no remorse. You will spend the rest of your lives paying for those choices." As the defendants were led away in chains, one of them, a man named Martinez, the cartel lieutenant, locked eyes with Marcus. His expression held no anger, only a kind of weary acknowledgement. The game was over. He'd lost. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of reporters waited. Cameras flashed as Marcus and Jenna emerged, their K-9 partners at their sides. Questions flew like bullets. "Lieutenant Hale, how does it feel to be a hero? Officer Cardwell, will you return to active duty? What's next for both of you?" Jenna stepped to the microphone, her voice clear. "Justice was served today, but none of this would have been possible without the courage of one man who didn't look away when someone needed help. Lieutenant Marcus Hale is the real hero of this story." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, unused to the spotlight. When a reporter thrust a microphone at him, he said simply, "I did what any SEAL would do. Officer Cardwell and her K-9 partner showed incredible bravery. They're the ones who deserve recognition." But the reporters weren't satisfied. They wanted the story, the drama, the Hollywood ending. Agent Vargas stepped forward, taking control. "That's all for today. Thank you." As they walked away from the courthouse, Jenna bumped Marcus's shoulder. "You're not good at accepting praise, are you?" Never saw the point, Marcus admitted. The job is the job. You do it right, you go home, you do it again the next day. Well, get used to it, because you're about to become famous. She was right. Within days, Marcus's story was everywhere. Local news, national networks, even international media. Navy SEAL saves police officer in dramatic desert shootout. The headlines varied, but the narrative was the same. Heroism, sacrifice, the thin line between chaos and order. 2 weeks after the trial, a ceremony was held at the Tierra Roja Police Department. The small parking lot was packed. Officers from surrounding counties, military veterans, and townspeople who wanted to honor the heroes of that night. Chief of Police Robert Delgado stood at the podium, his voice carrying across the crowd. We're here today to recognize extraordinary courage. Officer Jenna Cardwell exemplified the best of what it means to serve and protect. And Lieutenant Marcus Hale, a man who wasn't even on duty, who had every reason to walk away, instead chose to run toward danger. Today, we honor both of them. He presented Jenna with the Medal of Valor, the department's highest honor. Zara sat beside her, tail wagging as the crowd applauded. Jenna's parents were there, tears streaming down their faces, hugging their daughter tight. Then Delgado turned to Marcus. Lieutenant Hale, though you're not a member of our department, your actions that night represent the highest ideals of law enforcement. On behalf of the Tierra Roja Police Department and the citizens of this community, I'm honored to present you with an honorary citizenship and this commendation for bravery. Marcus accepted the plaque, shook the chief's hand, but his eyes kept drifting to Kaiser. The dog sat in perfect formation, watching Marcus with those intelligent amber eyes that had seen everything, knew everything, understood everything. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, a Marine Corps colonel approached. He was in his 50s, ramrod straight, his chest full of ribbons. Lieutenant Hale, Colonel James Reeves Marsock, I knew Reaper David Monroe. We served together back in the day. Marcus stiffened. Sir, I heard about what happened in Kandahar. I heard about how he died. Reeves's voice dropped. And I want you to know something. Reaper knew exactly what kind of man you were. He talked about you all the time. Said you were the best operator he'd ever worked with. Said if anything happened to him, he knew you'd carry on the mission. I failed him, sir. No, son, you're honoring him. Every day. Every time you choose to stand up for what's right, you're living the values he died protecting. Reeves gripped Marcus's shoulder. Don't carry that guilt anymore, let it go. Reaper wouldn't want that for you. The words broke something loose in Marcus's chest, a dam that had been holding back 3 years of grief and guilt and pain. His eyes burned, but he didn't look away. Thank you, sir, he managed. After Reeves left, Jenna approached. Hey, you okay? Yeah. Marcus took a deep breath. I think I might be. Good, because I have something for you. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter, official letterhead from the FBI. Dear Lieutenant Hale, your actions during Operation Desert Shield directly resulted in the arrest and conviction of 7 high-ranking cartel members and the seizure of over $200 million in illegal drugs and assets. Your tactical expertise and courage saved the life of Officer Cardwell and prevented countless future deaths from drug poisoning. In recognition of your service, the Federal Bureau of Investigation would like to offer you a position as a tactical consultant for our Special Operations Division. We need people like you, people who understand honor, sacrifice, and justice. If you're interested, please contact me at your earliest convenience. Respectfully, Elena Vargas, Special Agent in Charge. Marcus stared at the letter, then at Jenna. Did you know about this? She smiled. Vargas called me last week, asked if I thought you'd be interested. I told her you were looking for a purpose. Was I wrong? Marcus looked at Kaiser, who was watching him with that knowing expression dogs get when they understand something their humans haven't figured out yet. He thought about the desert, the isolation, the months of running from his past. Then he thought about that night in the warehouse, the moment when he'd chosen to run toward the danger instead of away from it, the moment everything had changed. No, he said finally. You weren't wrong. Jenna's smile widened. So, you'll take it? I'll think about it. But yeah, probably. Good, because I'm taking a job with the county's K-9 unit, expansion program. They want me to train new handlers. She looked at Zara, then at Kaiser. Thought maybe our partners could be training assistants. What do you think? Kaiser's tail wagged. Zara barked once, happy. The two dogs moved closer, sitting side by side, partners in the truest sense. I think, Marcus said, a real smile touching his lips for the first time in years. That sounds perfect. 3 months later, Marcus stood on the porch of a new house, not in the desert, but on the outskirts of Tierra Roja. It was small, simple, but it was home. A place where the silence wasn't suffocating but peaceful, where the ghosts could finally rest. Kaiser lay at his feet, gray starting to show around his muzzle, but his eyes still sharp and alert. Inside, Marcus could hear the sounds of life. Jenna's laughter as she and Zara worked through training exercises in the backyard, the hum of a television, the ordinary sounds of a world at peace. His phone buzzed. A text from Agent Vargas. New assignment. Possible cartel activity in Arizona. Need your assessment. Interested? Marcus looked at Kaiser. The dog met his gaze, and in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. They were warriors. They would always be warriors. But they weren't alone anymore. They had a purpose, a mission, a reason to keep fighting. He typed back, "Count me in." Then he put the phone away and sat down, scratching Kaiser behind the ears. The dog's tail thumped against the porch, content. "You led me out of the desert, boy," Marcus said quietly. "You saved my life that night, just as much as I saved Jenna's. You reminded me that there's still good worth fighting for." Kaiser leaned into his hand, a gesture of absolute trust and loyalty. The sun was setting over the New Mexico landscape, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was beautiful in a way Marcus had forgotten to notice during his months of isolation. But now, with a home, a purpose, and people who understood what it meant to stand between the innocent and the darkness, he could see it clearly. The war wasn't over. Evil still existed in the world. But so did honor. So did courage. So did men and women willing to stand up and say, "Not on my watch." Marcus had come to the desert to die slowly, to let his guilt and grief consume him. Instead, he'd found redemption in the most unexpected way, by doing what he'd been trained to do, what he'd sworn to do, what his fallen brother would have wanted him to do. He'd protected the innocent. He'd stood in the gap. He'd kept the promise. And in doing so, he'd finally found his way home. Final thoughts, addressing audience directly. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on foreign battlefields, but in the quiet spaces of our own hearts. Marcus came to the desert carrying the weight of survivors' guilt, convinced that he'd failed the people who mattered most. But through one night of courage, one decision to run toward danger instead of away from it, he discovered that redemption isn't found in isolation. It's found in service. His military working dog, Kaiser, never gave up on him. When Marcus had lost faith in himself, Kaiser remained faithful. When Marcus wanted to hide from the world, Kaiser led him back into it. That's the power of loyalty, whether it comes from a dog, a fellow officer, or a stranger who becomes family. Officer Jenna Cardwell walked into that warehouse alone, armed only with courage and her K-9 partner. She could have waited for backup. She could have played it safe, but she chose to investigate, to protect her community, to stand against evil even when the odds were overwhelmingly against her. That's what heroes do, not because they're fearless, but because they understand that some things are worth facing fear for. And in the end, two strangers, a broken SEAL and a small-town cop, found strength in each other. They proved that we're never truly alone when we're willing to stand for what's right. They reminded us that evil may be powerful, but courage, loyalty, and honor are stronger. Your life may not involve drug cartels or dramatic shootouts, but every day you face choices. Do you walk past injustice, or do you speak up? Do you help the stranger in need, or do you keep your head down? Do you let fear control you, or do you let courage define you? Marcus Hale and Jenna Cardwell chose courage, and in doing so, they saved not just each other's lives, but their own souls. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments. What was your favorite moment? Was it Kaiser's unwavering loyalty, Marcus's protective courage, or the moment these two warriors found redemption? We read every comment. God bless, and see you in the next story.